Hi, Leigh. Thank you very much for joining us today. It seems like every time we get together, there's another milestone being met at NexGen. And 2023 was a significant year for NexGen Energy with the provincial environmental assessment. And we can't underestimate the significance of this approval. Maybe you can just expand on that.
Yeah, hi, James. It's a significant milestone in the resources sector, full stop. Our provincial approval was the first one in over 20 years. It was the fastest one that had ever been approved as well. And look, I think that's a function of the very strong technical setting and benign environmental setting of the Rook I project, but also the project management that was performed by the team in understanding the rules and regulations incredibly well to a very fine level of detail, delivering all the requirements from a technical, environmental, social aspect with respect to that proactive stakeholder engagement with the local communities and the government departments, and basically taking a partnership approach which respected all stakeholders right from the outset, and being honest and transparent with the issues and communicating what is the most optimal path forward for the development of this project. And we've got excellent partners in the four communities in our local project area, and to have them all signed up with impact benefit agreements which reflect their understanding and support for the project. It's just a wonderful model with respect to how companies and communities can partnership in the successful development of a project. So that has all culminated in receiving that provincial approval. It is surprising. It's the first one in over 20 years. It does bring to light that the barriers to entry in the mining sector are significant, and it's one which we're incredibly proud of as an organisation over a long period of time to have achieved. But it's one milestone. We've got plenty more ahead of us. And as an organisation, we've always been looking forward to the moment that we get full approval, and that is federal approval as well, which we are very, very confident on is imminent. And then getting into construction, because once we're in construction, all aspects are back in our hands. We, as an organisation, we're very much looking forward to that opportunity.
And I have to admit, as an investor, I don't fully appreciate the complexities associated with the permitting process. But nonetheless, I'm still very surprised it's the first one that's been issued in 20 years, especially in this environment where we're running at deficits every year and the market is starving for more uranium.
Yeah, we need more uranium development companies coming online, and in order to fill the gap. Rook I is merely going to replace production that will be coming offline between now and 2028. The world needs more uranium mines, and it needs it from a diversified sovereign location. We want to see more mines in Canada. We want to see more mines in the US and Australia. And that's very, very important when you consider that the current global production, over 80% of it is under a severe sovereign risk or technical risk. And so we need more very conventional, well understood, highly reliable mines in solid jurisdictions politically to come online. And so if we in some way have helped open up the avenue for that, being the first one permitted in over 20 years, well, that's something we're equally as proud of as an organisation. And the world will be facing a power energy crisis in the not too distant future. And the provision of nuclear energy is absolutely essential in meeting that energy demand. And energy is the key component of a sound standard of living for the world's population.
Leigh, as you mentioned, the next significant step is the federal technical review of the Rook I project, EIS. Is this something we can expect in the first half of the year?
Yes, the process from here is we're expecting in February to have an update from the CNSC with respect to all the questions and comments that we received as a consequence of their technical review and the 120-day public review that was completed in November 2022, so about 14 months ago. Since that time, we've looked at all the questions. A lot of them were confirmatory in nature as to aspects in that are deep in the federal EIS document. Since that time, we've had the provincial approval of the EIS, and the two documents are identical, bar for some nuances. And we have worked with each of our four communities in going through all of those aspects, ensuring that they're understood and supported and then signed off. And so as a company and as part of the process, we have gone to all stakeholders, being very transparent with those questions, got support for all of those aspects, and we delivered that back to the CNSC in November of this year after the provincial approval. And we're expecting in February to receive the outcome of all of that work. From our perspective, there's no remaining issues. We've addressed every one of them, and we have full support of all the key stakeholders, the province, and also the communities that are in the area. The communities have sent formal submissions to the CNSC and the federal government demanding approval of the project. Obviously you can see that the stakeholder engagement with respect to the Rook I project right from the very early days back in 2012 has been very thorough. And that's why we're in this position. We are waiting imminently for the CNSC to conclude its process in order to be granted a commission hearing date and then subsequent approval in order to commence construction.
And you've also initiated a number of applications for approvals for earthworks and shaft sinking and other elements. When can we expect these permits, and are these coming from the provincial government?
Yeah, so they're combined. You need both provincial and federal licensing aspects. That the fact that we've lodged those applications signifies our confidence in that the federal EA process is close to conclusion, and so we are ready and able and looking forward to the time that we complete the federal permitting process and licensing process in order to commence construction.
And Leigh, when in production, Rook I will produce 28.8 million pounds annually in the first 5 years of production. And I want to put this into perspective for our viewers and just how significant that number is.
Yeah, it's a highly significant number when you consider that the world's expected, the final numbers are coming in from 2023, but it's forecast or anticipated to be between 135 and 140 million pounds. Just under 30 million pounds of 140 is very significant as a percentage, around 23-25% of the world's production. It's incredible when you consider that Russia and Russian influenced countries currently produce around 45% of the world's uranium supply. The US imported around 45% of their nuclear fuel from Russia and Russian influenced countries last year. When you look at Rook I being located in Saskatchewan, Canada, Tier 1 jurisdiction, with a very strong production profile, reliable production profile of 30 million pounds per annum, it really does signify the global importance of the Rook I project getting into production in order to diversify sovereign risk and also the technical risk and provide a reliable source of 30 million pounds annually. Those 30 million pounds, that's been a very large percentage of world production interesting when you consider that Saudi Arabia accounts for about 12% of world production of oil. The world's up and coming most important energy fuel, uranium, will be dominating the world's market at about 25%, possibly higher by the time we're in production because of those other mines are rolling off. And so we take that incredibly seriously. We understand the global importance of our project, and that's also been reflected by the interest from utilities that we have in Rook I production. We're getting an enormous amount of interest. Some of the offtake discussions are more advanced than others, but it really has ramped up in the last 6 to 12 months as we're progressing the project, but also as this market's starting to signify that the current production of uranium is very fragile.
And so I want to ask you about the offtakes, but before we do that, I want to ask you about construction. And I know there's still a lot of unknowns associated with permits coming from both the provincial and federal governments, but under a best case scenario, when can we expect commencement of construction?
Well, we're very confident we have the provincial approval, and so we are very confident of the federal approval. We'll have a better gauge of that end of February, in a month's time from now. But we see no reason we could not be permitted in 2024 and immediately commencing construction. We have done 100% engineering of the early construction items. We know exactly what we're building. It's a very simple mine. It's 1,300 tons per day. So we're basically moving an ore volume of about 1.5 double-decker buses a day. It's actually, whilst 25% of world production, it'll be coming from one of the world's tiniest underground mines. So we anticipate federal EA approval this year. We see no reason why that cannot happen, given the stage we're at and the support we have for it from all stakeholders. And we're ready to build it. We, as I said, all the early stage items of construction are 100% engineered, and we have the team in place, ready and able.
So let's talk about the economics now. When the most recent study was done using $75 uranium, the net present value came in at $5.8 billion. And if we were to use $100 uranium, right around where the market is now, what would the economics look like?
Yeah, it gets to it would take us into the top 10 mining companies worldwide, excluding gold companies. So it's incredibly impressive economically. I haven't seen a project with this type of internal rate of return, sovereign location profile, benign impact on the environment, as I have this project, and in all of my years in resources. It will generate after-tax net cash flow of around $2.1 billion every year. It has an extremely low all-in cash cost, around $10 a pound. And so at $106 where we are today, yeah, we're above $2 billion after-tax net cash flow every year. And so that takes us into the top 10, about number 8 of all mining companies worldwide, at $150 a pound, which I think's going to be a reality in the near future. We're knocking on the door of the top 5. So this is going to generate exceptional monetary returns for everyone involved. But on top of that, the contracting that it's going to generate for local communities, Saskatchewan and Canada, the royalties to the provincial government and the federal government will make it one of the most significant resources project in Canada. And then on top of that, when you consider all the employment, but also the fact that it's 30 million pounds of uranium is the equivalent of powering 46 million homes in the US, or removing 70 million vehicles of CO2 equivalent off the road a year. This project goes far, from a benefits point of view, goes far beyond that of just the pure economic, which it's going to be one of the world's leaders in any event. So phenomenal returns. A differentiating aspect is that we're a uranium company with full exposure to the future prices of uranium. I mentioned $150 a pound. I personally think it can go a lot higher than that when I look at the cost structures of the current producers, and that in order to incentivize development projects to get into production. So when you consider we have 100% exposure to future uranium prices, it gives us a very unique differentiator, because a lot of the existing producers are fully hedged, and it's well documented. The Western world's leading producer in Cameco openly state they have their production hedged for the next 5 to 7 years. They do have uncontracted pounds still to put in the contract book, which will be more market-related prices, but we offer full leverage to future uranium prices, and we will maintain that philosophy, given the technical nature of our project provides very high certainty around production volumes from 1 year to the next.
And Leigh, just because we're discussing the economics associated with the project, maybe we can also touch on your contracting strategy and what exactly it is.
Yeah, we will keep levered to market prices at the time of delivery. We're in competent basement rock with a very simple metallurgy. We can ramp production up and we can ramp production down. In fact, what we're working on at the moment is looking for flex capability in the mine in order to possibly produce more than 30 million pounds, subject to provincial and federal approvals once we're in production, to see whether we can increase production, because the market's demanding it. Again, very small mine, very benign impact environmentally. And so we're currently looking at that as we finalize engineering. And every pound that we produce will be around exposed to the market prices at the time of delivery. That's our philosophy. We have the technical setting and the cost setting in order to do that. And that's new in this market. It's never existed before. And so at NexGen, we're going to ensure that all of our stakeholders are always exposed to the future prices of uranium. And we have downside protection because we have such a low cost base. This project makes money going down to $25 a pound uranium. Now, I don't see us going as a uranium market. I think the downside is well understood. When you look at the average cost of production worldwide from Western world producers, it's hovering in the mid 50s to 60s. And so I don't see a scenario of the uranium price for many decades heading back to those levels that we've seen over the last decade. I see it going a lot higher from where we are today.
So 100% exposure to a rising uranium price.
Always.
Leigh, I want to move on now and discuss your balance sheet and possible funding solutions for the $1.3 billion CapEx. You're sitting on over $450 million in cash. The ATM was recently updated to sell up to $500 million in additional stock. You also raised $110 million last year through a debenture offering. Maybe you can just speak to all of this and how these options can be used to fund Rook I.
Yes, James, look, we're experiencing a significant increase in investor interest in NexGen. It's a function of our stage of development, federal permitting imminent, construction imminent. And interestingly, a lot of that increase in the interest in the story is coming from the Southern Hemisphere, from the Australian Stock Exchange and also Asia. ASX has always been very resource focused investment platform. And so at the end of Q3, early Q4 last year, we sold Patterson's, became a new shareholder, a very long, well-established, high-profile investor down in Sydney, along with some other funds on the ASX, very large pension funds, or they're called superannuation funds down in Australia. And we raised a total of $300 million. We did a little bit through the ATM as well. And the nature of those financings, we did it at a 1.5% discount to the spot share price at the time. So they were very non-dilutive. And they've gone to really strong hands that understand resources, see the fundamentals of uranium improving, and see that NexGen has terrific leverage to rising uranium prices. We've also had the aspect that as recently as this month, Leigh, who was a long-term shareholder of NexGen dating back to 2016, absolutely instrumental in giving us the ability to develop this project as optimally as we have. You know, their average entry price was in the low twos. We've replaced that in recent times with shareholders from the ASX with an average entry price of $9.50. So we've seen really good turnover of our core shareholder base. And Leigh made a phenomenal amount of money, which we're all very, very proud of. And it still is a shareholder. It's at around, I think last reported, at around 4%. We have these new shareholders coming on board, which are fully invested in the NexGen story, not only uranium fundamentals, but the importance of this project and the economic, social, and environmental returns of this project. As you said, we have $450 million in the treasury as we speak. That funds us incredibly well in the event that we do receive federal permitting this year and we immediately get into construction. We're well financed for at least the next 2.5 years, including the long lead time items that we've already committed to. We will need to raise additional money. We announced last year in May that we had expressions of interest of over $1 billion US in debt. That number and that level has increased significantly since May of last year, when the price of uranium was $50 a pound. We're now at 106. And so we have a lot of funding avenues for the construction of the project. Costs have gone up. Our feasibility study number of 1.3 billion Canadian in February of 2021 is subject to inflation, just like every other resources project. But an increase in the capex of the Rook I project isn't sensitive. The capex going up does not affect the after-tax NPV or internal rate of return of the project. So the project is very insensitive to any increases in capex. But we're not about to spend $1 we don't have to. We will ensure that this project is delivered on time and budget and in an optimal economic fashion. As mentioned earlier, we are looking at aspects to leverage flexibility around production levels and design that into the project possibly from the outset. So we're really doing those trade-off studies as we speak, as we're concluding the final engineering. We are expecting to finalize the funding package for the construction of the project at the same time we receive federal approval. And I'll just say to viewers, the number of additional avenues that we are receiving to optimally fund this project is, look, I had high expectations, but they've been exceeded. And they're coming from sources which are energy focused. And it's really good news for all investors, because it is further recognition that the role nuclear energy has to play on a world stage going forward is absolutely paramount. And it's really pleasing to see that practical science-based approach to energy policy is starting to prevail.
Leigh, NexGen is unique for many reasons, including the sheer size and scale of the Rook I project, but also because you're building a new platform, a new type of mining company. Maybe you could just expand on that and summarize what exactly we mean by that.
Yeah, look, when we discovered this project, we knew immediately that we had a world-class project on our hands. And that's only, but it's in the ground. And so I immediately took the tack as an organization that we're going to judge ourselves not on the quality of the asset, but on our ability to optimize the outcomes from extracting that ore from the ground. And not just from an economic sense, we wanted it from an economic, a social, an environmental, and a total stakeholder perspective. And so everything we've done since that day of discovery has been about setting a new level, an elite level for the resources sector. And to date, we've done that in every aspect of our organisation. We're well recognised for the efficiency of the discovery. There was no project over £100 million ever discovered in uranium in the Athabasca Basin for such a small cost per pound. More so from a meters drilled perspective. We employed new technologies that hadn't been used before, and they worked. And that resulted in a faster definition of the project and also a more validated data points with respect to the project in order for us to make good decisions. Our social engagement, before we even drilled the first exploration hole, I introduced myself to all the communities. Our social programs recognize that there's a job to be done in regional Canada. And we're very, very pleased and fortunate is the view that we take that we're in a position in order to be a large component in generating positive change. And so the culture is unique, and I think it is new in a lot of respects with respect to what, you know, we believe the investors, all stakeholders can expect better from mining. And we take the responsibility of leading that change for a more positive future for all stakeholders. It's very core to our culture. It's not for everyone, but the group that you see at NexGen, it's very, very important to them. And we'll continue to do what we're doing, how we're doing it, setting new standards. And we're very proud of that aspect of the organization.
That's a great overview. Leigh, as we wrap up, 2024 will be another news-heavy year. Can you just summarize for us what we can expect in terms of news flow from NexGen in the first half of the year?
Yeah, we're about to start our exploration program. As you're aware, Arrow was discovered on one of the very first holes on the Rook I project along the Patterson corridor. We've got an enormous amount of land area to cover, probably be there for 2 decades before we fully understand the full uranium disposition on the Rook I property. So we've got 2 drill rigs about to commence in the first early part of Q1. February, as I said, we're expecting an update from the CNSC with respect to our federal permitting progress. Hugely material. So I look forward to providing an update at about that time. We've got site activity going on, further confirmation around the geotechnical aspects of the exhaust and the production shaft. The accommodation camp at Rook I is being expanded in preparation to house the construction crew. So a lot of site activity going on the ground. And then also we'll be advancing offtake agreements and on those terms that I mentioned earlier to provide exposure to future uranium prices. I would expect that during 2024, given the state of negotiations. On top of that, financing of the project, the construction financing of the project as well. So that all on top of a rising uranium price. So yeah, lots happening. And look, we're very pleased to see the uranium price doing what it's doing, but I want to ensure everyone, and this has been the culture of NexGen, even when the uranium price was so low, the focus on the process and the discipline and to make good decisions every day, irrespective of whether the market's going poorly or extremely well, it doesn't change anyone's disposition at NexGen. We're about optimizing the outcome and what we control. and that's what investors get with the team at NexGen, that absolute resolute discipline around process and making excellent decisions.
Well, it sounds like you and your team are going to be very busy this year, and I want to thank you very much for making the time, and I look forward to our next update.
Always a pleasure, James. Thank you.
Thank you.